and get started. All right, we're recording. Well, welcome you guys. This blab today is about the future of workforce engagement and basically, should you care and does it matter? And my name is Janice Whiting. I am COO of ICOM4 and business partner and co-founder.
Can you just see me, Sean, out of interest?
Huh?
Are we just seeing each other?
No, I can see everyone.
Okay, I can only see you, so I can only hear you.
Who can you hear and who can you not hear?
So Tim's saying that he can only see me.
Oh, how
and
interesting.
he can only hear me.
Oh,
Right.
Oh, refresh. Roy says refresh. He says if you got
I'm going to try closing again.
try closing
Yeah,
again.
you got to refresh again. Sorry, mate.
I'm going to keep going though, so we'll keep going.
Okay.
And Tanya and the rest of the crew here, Sean and Tim, are all over in Australia. I'm here in California, near San Francisco area. So I'm gonna do my best to try to host this conversation and keep it on track and keep it moving. We have about 1 hour, but unless it's the most robust conversation we've ever had, then we might go a little bit further. But we're going to try to keep it to an hour.
I think Sean's on a call at 10. So
okay, all right. Well, just remember, you guys, if you need to pop off, you're welcome to pop off, and you can pop back on. So that's the nice thing about Blab is that it's almost like a coffee chat where we're sitting down, we're having a cup of coffee. We're having a chat. If you need to get up and take off for a minute and you come back and the seat's open, just come on back in and sit down. Oh, we lost him again. Well, we'll keep moving forward. So with that said, we're going to have Tanya and Sean and Tim on the call. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys introduce yourselves, and then we'll launch into the 3 questions that we're going to pose today. And we're just going to dig around in and just try to understand it a little bit more and express our own views, including me. I get to participate too. So why don't we go ahead and start with Sean and let you take it from there.
Great. Thanks so much, Janice. Okay, so I'm Sean Hall. My role is I am head of employee and customer experience at a company called LiveHire. And LiveHire are essentially a talent ecosystem that are helping workforces sort of have a much more deeper understanding of their capability and help them look at how they manage things like strategic workforce planning. And prior to this, I've just joined there. Prior to this, I worked at Telstra, which is is Australia's largest telco. And I headed up brand strategy there, and then I headed up employee experience there as well. And so this is very much of interest to me just because all of those sort of change programs, transformation programs I ran, both at Telstra and now what I'm doing today, are all around how you engage people to be a part of that process and see value in that process.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. Tanya, turn it over to you.
Okay, so I'm founder and CEO of ICOM4, and ICOM4 provides smart data assessments that help a company achieve their strategy and brand value. And in between that, it's all about the relationships, the energy levels that people have together whilst working with each other. So, yes, we provide the smart data analytics around that.
Okay. And Tim, are you here?
I can hear you all now. It's amazing. It's actually working. I assume we're doing introductions. Yeah, so my name is Tim. I'm a co-founder of JobVibe, which is a smart platform that allows you to provide real-time feedback for how you're feeling at work.
Fantastic.
Okay. Fantastic. So just a really quick thing. Those of you in the audience watching, just some really cool stuff I've learned. If you want to ask a question, it would do a /. So that means it's that going forward and a Q. And that will prompt me to see that it's a question. It'll also land in the question column on my page. And that way I know it's a question and I can. So I'm going to keep the conversation going, but I'm also paying attention to what you guys are saying. The other thing I'm going to do is, Tanya, I'm going to see if I can make you host also, just in case.
Okay.
See. Not quite sure how to do that, but I want to make you host just in case I have any internet problems. There's anything, then you guys can keep moving forward, and I'll pop back on if I can. Hover over her aviator on the top. Okay. I'm hovering. All right. Well, with that said, I'll look at what Roy is saying once I get you guys going on a conversation. So the 3 questions that we are asking today that I'm going to present are, what is engagement? What does it mean? Kind of who's involved? What's going on out there? So we're going to have a conversation about that. The second question we're going to move into is, what is the potential value of engagement? So why is this valuable to companies? What is the value that we've seen, experienced, and et cetera? And then the third is, what are we currently working on? And how does this help companies with their engagement levels? So with that said, those are our three general topics that we're trying to stay focused on. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one. What is engagement? And we're going to go ahead and open it up kind of in a way. We're going to start with Sean. We can move to Tanya and then Tim and let you answer that. But remember, you guys, this is about having a conversation. It's not a one-directed, I'm going to tell you. You guys, we need to talk. We're having a conversation about it. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right?
No, we
okay. Okay. All right.
Who are you asking?
Sean, let's start with Sean.
Okay, cool. So, look, a couple of weeks ago, I went to a conference that was looking at the future of contingent workforce. And one of the speakers there spoke about engagement. And one thing that he said really resonated with me is that when we're looking at engagement, we should be looking at the amount of time that people are engaged, right? So I think that the way that traditionally we measure engagement is sort of a once a year type thing, a sort of finger in the air. And there's a lot of stuff that goes around that might not necessarily give us a true indication of how things are going. And also because of how quickly the world is changing today, we need to be able to get that feedback a lot more quickly in real time so that we can be more agile. And so I think for me, it's about really coming back to the definition of engagement, which is about that amount of time in which people are truly engaged in the type of work that they're doing. And, there's a positive psychology work around the theory of flow. And I think combining those two things to think about, well, when are our people really energized around the work that we're doing, and how can we, and I think this is where the data and analytics it needs to evolve to, is actually being able to measure for us and surface that to people about even when they work best themselves. When was that time you were in flow that you just sort of time disappeared? Why was that? Who were you working with? What were you working on? Where were you working? All of those sort of things that would give us much more insight about how we increase the amount of time that people are engaged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That flow kind of starts stepping in, doesn't it, into that strengths and everything like that. So from the perspective of what I believe employee engagement is, and following on from what Sean said, it's the connection and the connection and the commitment that the workforce has towards the company, and to some degree the brand of the business. Like, are you proud to be working for the company that you're working for? Are you proud of what they do in the workplace and how they help the wider community? And I also believe that it's probably one of, if not the top, measurement tool used by HR and CEOs to get a gauge on how the workforce is tracking. How happy are they? Are they likely to stay? Are they likely to leave? So when CEOs are looking to kind of understand the state of play of their workforce, they're turning to employee engagement results as well as employee turnover results. That kind of seems to be, in the past, the measurement tools which are out there, but I think the industry is actually changing. And finally, I also believe that it is a measurement of people's wellness and energy levels. If you've got high levels of energy, you've got high levels of wellness, and you're enjoying your job, you're enjoying the relationships with the people that you are working with, you flow. You're in that flow, and you're enjoying your day. By the time you've left the office at the end of the day, you're not walking out exhausted and depleted of energy, but you're walking out and going, it's just feeling good. And the more times that people walk out feeling good at the end of the day, the higher the productivity of the workforce and the more likely they're going to stay working.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to jump in here a little bit and just share. I think about I think about all three of us have built companies. I mean, and you think about that state you're in when you're putting in 14, 15 hours a day, you're really taxing yourself. So, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I got a little shocky thing that I put on my back sometimes just so I can shock myself and keep working. And it's not because Tanya's an evil boss. She's a border of evil, but it's because I'm so passionate about what we're trying to achieve. I'm so passionate about the work, even the work I cannot stand, because we're in the software industry too, as you guys are. We have our platform is software driven, and I have to do that software kind of work that I don't like to do. I still am engaged, and that's, I just want to pop a little bit on that flow and what you guys were talking about. So, and Tim, how about you? Want to chime in?
Yeah, look, I mean, for me, I guess when you are particularly talking about it in the sense of a company, probably some of the bits that Tanya and Sean have already mentioned, but for me, it means, how connected and aligned teams are with each other, but also with the company they're a part of. So I know that Tanya was sort of talking a little bit about that. And it really comes down to, are they contributing? How easy is it for them to contribute? Are they passionate about what they're doing? But I think to Sean's earlier point as well, that engagement probably means in many ways something different to each of us and individuals, because do you have a purpose? Are you passionate about what you do? Do you have that kind of that mission that you're following, and you truly believe in what your company's doing? And I think that the problem we've probably faced to date is that the word engagement it's actually quite overused, and it almost goes down to one of those words like innovation, which I think gets banded around a little bit, and I think because engagement can mean different things to different people, the problem when you use that as a broad brush term, it kind of starts to lose its meaning. So people say, I want to measure engagement. And then you sort of think about, well, how are you measuring engagement? What does engagement actually mean to you? And the problem, if you don't understand that and know what actually engagement means to your team, you're never really going to be able to measure that effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so you guys, anyone add on to that?
The only thing I think is just like listening to this as well, I think that there's something really nice, I guess, in that thinking that there's a responsibility, I guess, that you want a person that has a relationship with your brand, whether that's an employee or a customer, to actually be better off because of that relationship, and so hearing sort of Tanya talk about wellness, I think that's what we're there to do. And I think that, I guess, we're evolving from better off being more about sort of the functional, rational stuffs like well paid and benefits and things like that, to actually well off, be more about your, to Tim's point about, the connection with your personal purpose, and am I able to achieve that through the work that I do? Is my personal purpose connected to the organization's purpose? And so when you talk, Janice, I mean, I can totally agree with that. When you feel that you're connected to what the organization's trying to do, and that's part of what you want to contribute to as well, then it's very easy to sort of get lost in the work.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's two main points for me here. One is that I think it's two things, and with every industry, you kind of go here, and then you try to figure out the middle between what does this mean? What does engagement mean? It really is up to the individual. What engages me is going to be completely different than Tim and Sean. And for me, and it's not a criticism of the industry, but I think the industry has really tried to hone it down to a point that it's almost, they really have kind of pigeonholed people into a pretty tight box around what says I'm engaged or not engaged. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big challenge.
Yeah, I think that's probably a combination of also using, traditional approaches and techniques. So a lot of, because, as people always say, and our chairman always says this, that the world hasn't changed, people have changed. And that means that, with all of this change, you've got to really come up to speed with the techniques and the tools that you're actually using to help enable people to do certain things. And I think particularly in this area, it's just been that problem where it hasn't evolved fast enough, and we're still trying to retrospectively fit these older styles tools on a kind of a newer age workforce, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and therefore we're seeing reports coming out now stating that employee engagement is a waste of time, a waste of money, is not important. And I think it's because of the traditional tools have people focusing on the wrong areas because they're not able, or they're not trained or skilled enough to interpret the data which is being presented. Like just before I came on here, I just pulled on the internet the top 10 most popular employee engagement questions. Okay, so one of them was, how do you feel about coming to work every morning? That's one of the common engagements. So you might go, well, crap, I don't feel good at all. Well, so people would take that question and then think, oh, we need to make them feel good coming to work each morning. But they have no idea why they don't feel good, because they haven't established how people are different and are motivated by different things. So using those traditional, big players of employee engagement might be valuable from a benchmarking perspective, but it's really not helpful for companies to understand what they need to do to engage each individual, each team, each division, each department, with how they communicate with each other, how they communicate with their leaders, how they communicate with what Tim said, other departments, and with the clients. So I think we're going to see a major change in how people are managing this and what they're going to start measuring now, and turn it more to ongoing measurements, etc.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing is that when I've sort of looked at say the work that HR does in this area, I guess the intent is always good, I think, and I think that's something that I think it's important not to forget, is that people have a great intent to try and make these places work, but the tools that they're working with don't necessarily allow that to be fully realized. And I think when we look at it, traditional ways of measuring engagement, there's sort of one quantitative study done once a year, and I would say it's very inconsistent whether those are then that's then followed up with sort of qualitative work to really truly unpick the why. Why, as you say, so why are they not feeling good? Well, it could be a whole bunch of things that are very different to that individual, and so instead of trying to fix them, actually understanding the why and getting to know them more individually, I think is sort of what's important.
Well, and I think it's especially consultants, we're amazing at this. We try to simplify things to a manageable level, and I think that's what's happened in the industry, is that it's this is why they're using tools that do this, because it's so big. And so it's how to manage it. Hammer asks, so at its basic level, it's people caring about the work they do and or the company they're working for. He's asking that question of us.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So far at its base level, it's people caring about the work they do and or the company they're working for. He's asking us if that's true or not.
Because I think it is at a base level. I mean, I think that definitely plays into it, but I think it really goes back, for me anyway, I think it really is about that alignment. So you care about the work you do, but you're actually aligned with what the company is trying to do at the same time. So by having that alignment, you then have that dual kind of caring for yourself, but also for your company. And I think without that alignment, it can then sometimes be a bit hard to keep that engagement level up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say it's not one or the other. It is both. First of all, you've got to care about your work, right? If you don't care about your work, you can't care about the company. And you can't care about the company and not care about your work. They kind of work.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the difference between engagement and satisfaction. I have had this conversation. I know years, especially like I've chatted with my sister, and things like that, kind of general ways. But, I ask her, like, do you care about where the company's going and she goes, no, not really. I don't care. I just want to I want to wake up every morning and I want to enjoy my job. And I want to enjoy the relationships I have there. I don't want to get beat up every day. I don't want to feel bad. And I think, Sean, what you said, I even wrote it down, that she wants to feel better off by the interaction she had with the company and the people around her than if she didn't have it. And I think, to me, that's such a crux. And even if you don't, there's a lot of individuals out there that have jobs that are not exciting. They're not interesting. They're actually rather boring, but they need to get done. Can they still have that? Can they still, quote unquote, be engaged as an employee?
Well, I think yes, because it comes down to your individual needs, right? Because it might be a means to an end, for some people, versus their work having played a bigger part around their identity. And I think this is what's I feel is what's new, and why there's this sort of change that we need to create here, is that a lot of people I think people sometimes need a little bit of help in actually understanding what their individual purpose is to start with, because that requires, a decent level of self-awareness to begin, decent level of reflection to begin. And then the role of the leader is to help them actually connect the dots to how that can actually be achieved within that working environment, and how it's connected to what the company wants to achieve. I think to your point too about your sister, I mean, yeah, a lot of people don't really care about the strategy. They just want to focus on what they've got to deliver that day, and it's the leadership that are responsible for looking forwards. It's not necessarily everybody that sort of needs to do that. Some people need to focus on right now in that moment on delivering that level of service for the customer. And they'll want to understand why the company exists, but they might not necessarily have to understand everything that's got to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because the way we kind of look at the measurement of engagement, first of all, we link the skills and behaviors to the strategies of the business, right? Because if you're going to measure something, for what purpose are you measuring? How is it going to help a person achieve their goals? How's it going to help the company achieve their goals? And if they're front-facing client staff, how is that going to support the brand promise, right? So first of all, that's if whatever we ask, we link it to a business outcome. But then we look at asking them, well, what do you desire? And then what do you experience, right? And I think all the other services are going, what do you experience? You say, well, I don't experience that. Then you go, oh, we need to make sure they experience that. You go, well, I actually don't want to experience it. I want to experience this. But because you haven't asked me what I desire, don't know what my purpose is. And I think a lot of people, because I've just seen a question come in, is a lot of people don't even know what their purpose is, right? It's hard to know what your purpose is. You kind of bumble along and, you might get a counseling or something, find out what your values are and stuff like that. But when you just turn it to, well, what do you desire to happen in the relationship that you have? What do you desire to happen, in the relationship that you have with your leader or, the people you're working with? It allows you to kind of understand a bit more about what drives you and what motivates you. To get closer to what actually pushes your buttons and energizes you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So Sean and you guys, if you see a question pop up in the feed, feel free to pop on and start answering it. It just let us know you're answering the question. How about you guys, this idea? So Zach asks, how do you help people find their purpose? We don't want to stay too much on this because we do need to move on to our next question. But with that, let's answer that, and then let's go on to move on to our next question. Tim and Sean, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll kick off. It's not a very easy one to answer, I think, as the guys have just pointed out. But I think the key is a big part that Sean was mentioning, that it really does come down to that role of the leader in terms of having those conversations. Because the more conversations you have and the more open that dialogue you keep between your teams and the manager, the more you're going to actually be able to discover in the long term. And I think the problem that we've had in the past, and if you look at anything from surveys or employee performance reviews or whatever it might be, is that you're always talking in such sort of stagnated way, in such sort of like, 1 or 2 intervals per year. And I think because when you do that sort of stuff, it's very difficult to delve deeper into how somebody actually feels about what they're doing. So having that constant discussion, keeping a very open and transparent approach to the way you run your team and the way you actually interact within your team is for me, is the key.
Mm-hmm. Tim, question, your platform, can they put whatever questions they want into the platform?
That's a part of it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sean, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the thing that so when I've talked to my teams about this, there's 2 questions I get them to think about. And I think arriving at your purpose does, as Tim said, does take a bit of reflection over time. And the more that you can get some feedback and talk about it as well versus sort of trying to do it by yourself is great. But 2 main questions, and I think if you can find the intersection between the 2 questions, then you're sort of on the right track. And the 2 questions I get people to think about is what is it that they really care about, right? That they really care about, that's important to them, sort of almost on a spiritual level, right? And often you can ask the inverse questions that, like, what's the thing that really pisses you off? Not small stuff, but, big stuff that you really want to make a difference to. And then I think the other question is, what is it that you're really great at? That, over the period of your career, people have told you and your friends have told you time and time again that you're really great at that thing. If you can put your strengths, which are your strengths there, together with what you really care about, I think that there's a little bit of magic at that intersection. And that's where I sort of get people to sort of think about it as they try to find out what their purpose is.
Mm-hmm. Very well. All right, we have a couple of people who have just joined us, so I'm going to go ahead and just quickly recap. We are talking about the future of workforce engagement. Should you care? Why does it matter? You've got 3 experts, well, maybe 4, but I'm hosting, so I don't have to be an expert today. In and around engagement, we are not quote unquote engagement people per se, like a Gallup, but we all work in the space of engagement, and the core of our work all boils down to this idea of workforce engagement. And so we just talked about and answered the question, what is engagement from our perspective? So let's move on to the next one. What is the potential value of engagement? So we're going to answer that. And then the next one, we're going to talk about some of the things that we're doing to shift the industry in and around engagement. So the second question, what is the potential value of engagement? Let's go ahead and start with Tim this time and let him kind of take a little bit of the lead on that one. And just let you start talking.
Cool. Look, I think this probably goes back to, a lot of what we've just spoken about, but it really, for having that connected and aligned team, the kind of value that you can create out of that is really huge. But again, I think to create that value, as we've all talked about, you need to create value for your teams as well. So it's not just about, Sean and I have talked about this before, where you try and squeeze as much as you can out of your teams to get the most out of them. It's, it's totally not about that at all. It's actually about how can you work with your teams and how can you provide them with what they need so that they can actually then, be engaged and provide the associated benefits from that. And I think we all know that there are a heap of studies out there. Great Place to Work is one of those. Also, you've probably seen a little bit in the Global Human Capital Trends report. But it really just showed that engaged companies that, they're experiencing a lot of different benefits, from higher retention, which is great, more profitable, better customer service, because when they believe in that, and as Sean was talking to as well, and no doubt you saw, Sean, in your business at Telstra, is that when those people believe in something so passionately, that just exudes from them, and they want to provide that to everybody that they work with, and it starts to radiate, and then that helps all the other teams that you've got within the same company. And I think as well, if you look at some of more of the companies out there that are doing this great, and that I guess from the outside appear to have really engaged companies and really great cultures, from your Googles or your Zappos or your Airbnb, even Buffer, but even some of them at home. So you've got say Campaign Monitor or Atlassian as well, where they have this really close alignment to what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve. And you see the associated benefits out of that because of the reputation those companies have. And the work that they output as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the value is ultimately, if we're going to use sort of the corporate finance speak, this is about productivity, right? So people producing more valuable stuff for customers, that they're going to buy, and to Tim's point, it being a point of value for that individual as well, and contributing to that. I did. What I found in sort of my research is that there's always sort of 3 stakeholder groups that an organization is aware of, and that's your customers, your people, and your shareholders. And often, if you prioritize one of those, certain behaviors turn up in the business. And when those companies that Tim talked about are companies that are prioritizing their people, right? Because they understand that the experience of their people, the employee experience, is ultimately going to drive the customer experience. And so I think I'm, I guess, a big fan of sort of coming back to this energy thing about sort of even trying to redefine what productivity means, away from being sort of this dirty word, which is about squeezing the most that you can out of a person, to actually being about taking responsibility for the system in which that person operates, energizing them, around the ways which are personal to them, and then making it easy for them to do their job, like removing hierarchy, removing unnecessary processes, anything which is essentially does not create value. So I think that there's such a great opportunity to start to actually to shift there, and I think HR's got an amazing opportunity right now to really play a leadership role in defining this. But and I think that those companies that are born digitally are naturally doing this, but traditional organizations have got to catch up.
Interesting point. Why do you say that companies that were born digitally are naturally doing this?
I think that there's I think because the startup mentality, right, is that any activity or energy in a business is either creating value or it's not, right? There's no gray area. And therefore, as these guys have sort of born and pivoted and gone in new directions, that's sort of the question that seems to be always asked. You know, are we creating value with this activity or are we not? And being able to actually look at that way and be able to sort of, you know, when you're creating value, there's a sense of success and achievement that comes with that. And I think that just ultimately adds up to sort of a higher level of engagement as well. Whereas what traditional organizations have had to get scale through size, you know, and therefore, if you scale through size, you're inherently adding more and more complexity, which means that you've got more and more stuff in the system which doesn't create value.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And also, I think, you know, carrying on from what Sean said, the older the organization, the more stuck in its ways it becomes, and the more attached it becomes to the way they've been looking at employee engagement in the past. But going to what Sean says, and the question you asked is the potential value of engagement. I totally agree that there is a link between employee engagement, customer satisfaction, and therefore the value and the reputation of a brand and company. I mean, you look at, there was an ad in Australia, so if anyone's listening from Australia, I think it was St. George Bank, where they were standing around a barbecue. He says, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" The guy says, "I work for a bank," and everybody goes, "Oh." He goes, "Oh, no, I work for St. George," you know? So that's about building the value of a brand through the people who work in the organization. And I think what's actually happening, unless companies start chunking it down on how to manage and raise employee engagement from a business unit perspective, from a team perspective, it becomes too massive to try and handle. Because you can't look at employee engagement at the top and go, okay, we're going to get everybody engaged in the organization by doing this and rolling it out to everybody. Because, like Tim said, everybody is different and requires different things. So when companies start to say, okay, well, let's tackle this from a team perspective, right? Each team has a group of people they're working with, they have leaders they're working with, and they have departments that they have to deal with on a daily basis. So if we can get those close units engaged, working together, there's high levels of energy, there's high levels of well-being, you know, happiness, respect for each other, there's a flow of work taking place. Companies will then see that their employee engagement levels will naturally go up because they're tackling it in small ways. And that requires finding out what people desire versus what they experience, and then measuring it constantly. Not leaving it to once a year, you know, or half a year. We're working on this. This is what we know we want help with. We're developing. I'm not sure if you're getting some track.
You're breaking up a little bit. You know, I did a lot of work in my early years. I did a huge amount of work in the nonprofit arena. And if you want to see an interesting dynamic, go ahead and you got people working for pennies who are so passionate, so committed. And then we watch those nonprofits grow and grow and grow. And it's interesting. You still have a certain amount of passion, but you start to lose a level of engagement that you have in the beginning. So it's, you know, I've watched people work that even in really poor working conditions, in the worst neighborhood, and they're still passionate about it. I'm getting some bad feedback here. Are you guys getting a lot of feedback, or just on my end?
A little bit.
I'm hearing feedback from you.
Okay. I'm going to be quiet for a second and see if I can figure out what's going on.
Are you getting feedback from us?
A little bit.
Yeah.
You know what, Tanya? I'm gonna turn over hosting to you, and then when I'm gonna come back in and knock. So let me in.
Have I got hosting?
Oh, what is that?
Okay.
Have you guys got earphones? Maybe I don't know if that helps at all, but
I think
Oh, I do. Plug in your earphones. Maybe that'll help. Connie, do you have a headset? You don't have a headset. All right, let's see if that helps a little bit.
That's much better now.
Okay, maybe it was just me. We have a couple of questions up here. I just want to go back up a little bit. Thank you guys for joining. We have a couple more people on board here. Starts with the company being comfortable being givers first and foremost. And I think that particular statement, Zach, it really resonates with what we were just talking about. How it's that micro, perspective of looking at that core level of the individual and the relationship they're having with the people around them and their leaders, and how they're showing up every day and their experience they're having. And I think sometimes it's hard for companies to go that deep. They don't want to. I don't know about you guys, but you can start talking about touchy-feely things with CEOs, and they get really uncomfortable because it seems too touchy-feely. But unfortunately it's actually critical to increase engagement levels. You need to have that element.
Yeah, and I think what CEOs and C-suite are comfortable with is data.
Yeah.
And the more that we can speak the language, I guess, the C-suite, which is really to talk about data and metrics and those sorts of things, because what we're starting to see, I guess, is this increasing amount of platforms that are available that are actually going to surface data, not just about how people feel, but the ways in which they're working, and the more that we can connect those data sources with the customer outcomes, the better. And that's the way that's what we sort of need to be aiming for. I know I was looking, what's funny is that there's often within businesses, you'll find that there's probably multiple sources of employee data exist in different pockets of the business. And none of them really talk to each other, and none of them really serve insights about actually not just how people feel, but what are the behaviors that they're doing. I read a really interesting piece of McKinsey research that talked about the role of social technologies in enabling productivity as well. And they said there's some ridiculous statistic that on average, if you're at an interaction or a knowledge worker, which is really the future of the workforce, we're all going to be sort of knowledge and interaction workers, that we spend something ridiculous like 6 weeks a year just doing email, and that we spend 4 weeks or something ridiculous looking for information that we've already got, because we don't have really great ways of storing knowledge.
You've been hanging out with Tanya and I.
And so this is where we need to. And the great thing about collaborative technologies, social technologies that are coming, things like Slack, or I think Cisco's got something called Spark. I don't think anyone's really solved it yet, but they are meaning that instead of email is not a collaborative technology, and we know that organizations, if they want to be agile, and this is all linked to engagement as well, is that they need to be more social, more collaborative. And so what are the tools that people are using in order to deliver customer outcomes? And that I think being able to sort of look at this sort of the data and analytics as surface there, you'll be able to see, eventually, and hopefully in the near future, look at who are the most collaborative teams, the most engaged teams, and be able to see that on the other hand, I'm doing two hands here, that those teams are also delivering a higher value to the business, higher value to the customer as well.
This is great because this is going to lead me back into our last question. So we've talked about what is engagement. We've talked about the potential value of engagement to companies, and so the last one. What are we all of us working on, and how do we help companies? How are we? So are we part of the solution? Or are we part of the problem? So how are we doing things that are approaching this differently than what's going on right now? So let's move into, where are we? What are we offering here? And I don't mean a sales pitch, of course. These guys never do that, but we're talking about how we're approaching this in a different way. We're on to our last question, Tanya.
Sorry, I had to
can I just say, one of the things I love about what Tim's doing and his team is that if you look at what they've built, the user experience is equal in the sort of quality that you would expect of a user experience of like a normal consumer app or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And that for me is I'll let Tim sort of talk more about that, but I think that's really great. And that what I see and what I've experienced is that often, you'll be dealing with the user experience, which is like just really awful if you work within an organization, finance systems that, are designed that are non-intuitive, that you basically need the skills of a wizard to sort of manipulate and get around, versus something which is simple and intuitive. Sorry, I'll let Tim sort of say that, but I just want to say that was definitely one of the things that I sort of noticed about what you're doing, mate.
Oh, well, thank you for that. That's very kind. Look, from what we're trying to do, we're really, I guess, approaching the feedback platform as it stands today and trying to work out what we have been working on anyway is, I guess, all the things that haven't been so great in the past. So when we originally set out, I guess, in the creation of our product, learning about, I guess, the pain points that people had across, from an employer perspective and also sort of the individual team member at the end of the day about, why are those systems broken? So from the employer, that they're not getting enough real-time feedback as it stands. And I kind of talked about that before, that you're either getting it maybe once a year, maybe twice a year if you're lucky. But then really when it comes down to the end user, they're probably things that they want to say on an ongoing basis, and they want more visibility about how everybody else is feeling as well, but they don't have that mechanism as it stands today. And that's really what we try and do. We just try and make sure that people can put feedback in whenever they feel like it. Ours is actually done on a weekly basis, asking how your week was. And then we constructively look at those things that they could do to help improve it. So trying to, give that sort of autonomy to the individual team so they can be empowered enough to drive that change and they don't have to wait for other people to do it. They've got that power themselves. And I think, we're definitely not there yet in terms of what we want to get to, but, the signs that we see from the people we work with, and I think as Sean mentioned, really going down to try and design something that is for the user. It's built for the user so that they can, I guess, cut through all the pieces they've seen before and try and cut through that cynicism that they've got about, anything from feedback or performance reviews or whatever it might be. Because I think in this area, it's unfortunately, it's just one of those, probably those lags from using much more of the industrial age style techniques that everyone doesn't really think that we care. It's just about, measuring so we can actually tick a box or whatever it might be. We're really trying to cut through that and provide them with a platform that they can own, that they can give that feedback, and that they can actually have conversations rather than being surveyed. It's actually about starting a conversation with their manager and with their teams about how they can improve together.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Tim, will you just do real quick, kind of just give us a 30-second commercial about your product, because that was great, but I think the audience might be going, well, what?
Yeah. No, that's fine. I was just conscious I didn't want to go too much into a sell, but
yeah.
Look.
No, I just yeah.
No, well, look, our platform is called Job Vibe, so you can find out a bit more at jobvibe.me. But what it is, it's a mobile app that teams basically, they'll get prompted every Friday about how their week was feeling. They just answer good, okay, or bad. And then we ask two questions, what could be better and what was good. And what we do with the data is that it's all still anonymous, but we actually surface it in an open and transparent way. So no one can see who said what, but it allows people to see, what's the vibe like of my team, so I can actually get that validation very quickly. How am I feeling as opposed to my team? And also, what are people talking about? Is it just me who's struggling with communication, or does my whole team think that's an issue that we need to improve together? Likewise, are there things that we can celebrate together that are going really well, and really sort of, be proud of our achievements? And the other part of the app is really trying to bring everyone together. So that communication piece about connecting teams. Look, it could be disparate teams. It could be teams in the same office that don't see each other as much, but just a really nice mechanism to share things together, to continue that vibe process, essentially. and to celebrate what's going really well.
Can I ask one quick question on that? When you come into a company, can it just one team use it? Let's say I'm a manager and I just want to do this with my team and I don't know what the company's going to do. Can you do one-off like
Definitely.
that? And, okay, you can. And then the second thing is, do you offer up like a package where, let's say Tanya, myself, and our team, we say, look, we want to do this. Do we just get the assessment? Do we kind of get like maybe a 5-week program that we kind of follow? We do. I mean, how does that work? I'm curious.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, look, right now, I'll just show you if you can see that. But that's the screen of what it stands at the moment. What we're actually evolving to in the next couple of weeks, we actually start to provide recommendations off the data that you're seeing. So that process I mentioned before, you can see me at the top there. I'll just try and click in the right way. And I can start expanding some of the things that I've been saying. But where it gets the power is that you can see how the other teams are feeling, how the company might be feeling. So that's where I can actually start to have a look at what other people are talking about. But where we're really going to that is providing those recommendations, those tips and those insights that people need to continue. So it's kind of like the what's next. So I can see that focus is an issue for me or for my team. What are some tips about how I can start improving that? And how can I start suggesting ideas off the back of that as well? But we also do reporting and action plans and all that kind of stuff off the back of it to really help. And we work with consultants as well for specific programs. But it's really designed to be that you get a lot of the data in the app. You don't need to go and have to run through heaps of reports and pull heaps of pages and all that kind of stuff. It's just about the feedback is there real time in your hands, and you can go away and just start using it as a team.
I like that because it's kind of like, as a personal trainer in my life and always been a health nut and try to take care of myself, it's kind of like weight or health is that usually by the time it shows up as a problem, you've done so much damage has been done that now you got to all this repair work, where what I'm hearing from your product is you're stepping on the scale often enough to know that your pants aren't going to fit.
Yeah.
So that
wait to the end of the year.
Well, I know. And I think that it's that micro level.
Yeah.
Feeding into macro, but it's the micro moment to moment. It really does allow you to kind of keep a check on it.
Yeah.
So very cool.
And I think you probably look at what performance reviews have done there, like companies like GE and I think Accenture and like a lot of those other ones who they scrapped their whole performance review system. I mean, that's obviously in a different area, but you can see the benefits of just having those ongoing conversations, providing feedback, insights to people so that they can improve as they go. Because one of these examples I've used in the past is that I'm very unlikely to be working on a project for 6 months. You can actually find things aren't working 2 or 3 weeks in. You go, no, I'm just going to wait until the 6-month mark to then deliver my feedback on why it wasn't working. By that time, it's too late. You wouldn't do things like that.
And I think that the more companies move towards lead indicator data rather than lag indicator data, they're in control of the capabilities and engagement levels and energy levels of the workforce. They're way more in control. So at the end of the year, they're more likely to have their key staff staying with the company. They're more likely to have, happier clients, and they're going to be reporting better profits than if they just keep waiting for annual reviews and stuff like that, which these annual reviews aren't really identifying what the problem is anyway and what to do about it. It's just, there's no linkage whatsoever. So those annual reviews, the strategies of a business, and what HR decisions are being made about development of staff. There is a complete disconnect there.
Yep.
The companies are wasting millions of dollars and money developing people in areas, but without any measurement for why they're developing them in these areas.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
So Tim, I just want to point out Zach's he has a new tagline for your company down there in the corner.
Thanks, Zach.
Job by helps you fit your business in your pants.
Might have to try that one out. See how that goes.
That's awesome.
Well, with that said, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to go to Tanya next and have her share ICOM 4, and then we'll go to Sean.
What are we on the final question?
We're on the final. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. That's right. You were off. What are we doing differently? So we talked about engage and we talked about value, and now what are we doing? Us, ICOM 4, different in the industry.
So what we do, we look at the leader and the leader's ability to inspire and motivate their staff. So we identify through gathering feedback, which is
at least every quarter, but not weekly. That's why the two of our products, this is why, Janice, I want us to talk to Tim, because I think this product alongside ours will be powerful, right? But so send out an assessment to start with, and we'll gather feedback from the workforce saying, what do you desire from your leader, what you're experiencing from your leader, in 16 leadership areas, which pull out 1 to 3 areas that the leader needs to focus on developing that skill. And if they develop that skill, they'll be connecting with their team members, and they'll be raising the engagement levels of the team whilst developing their leadership skills. So again, we believe that everybody is motivated by different things. So every single individual also ends up with their own dashboard so that they can start taking responsibility for their own engagement levels as well. So what we look at doing is building leaders and a self-directed workforce in the areas of engagement. That's what's working for us. That's how we're helping companies. Now, companies are still, those big companies are not moving away from those big players. They're still measuring it. It's like, okay, carry on. After you've got the results, however, don't immediately jump in and say, okay, you don't have a good relationship with their manager without establishing why. Right now you need to know why and how you're going to do something about that. So, we tend to be the linchpin in the middle of bad
I think you've got your hand over your microphone, Tanya.
Is your hand over your microphone? Did you cover your microphone?
I'm balancing the laptop. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, you're better. Say your last sentence one more time. Your last point.
I think I'm thinking, what did I say? I think I said it's about the how. So when companies, especially large companies, want to stick to the big players, because they are they're looking for benchmarking against industry type and stuff like that. So when companies use that, we kind of fit in the middle. We say, okay, don't now launch in to reading those results and assuming that this is what you've got to do about it, because we haven't actually established how are you going to raise employee engagement levels yet. There's been no establishment there. So kind of our assessments sit in the middle of that, and then Tim's would track it on a weekly basis.
I see a partnership.
Potentially.
All right, Sean. So I'm going to turn it over to you to answer the last question. What are you doing? What is your company doing that's shifting this industry?
Right. So we're a data and technology company called LiveHire.me. If you go on the net, and there's a couple of things that we're doing at the moment. The first is we have is a live market. So what we're able to offer to people that need employees is a way to access talent on demand. So if you think about other things out there that are networks like LinkedIn, that sort of thing, and the language that's used about passive talent and things like that, we don't think that that's really, I guess, really what the reality is. So on LiveHire, you can basically go in there. If you're looking for a role but you're still in an existing role, you can actually be in the market. And you can be in the market anonymously versus, say, on LinkedIn, where you can't really put your hand up and say, hey, I'm working here, but I'm looking for my next opportunity. So it allows that sort of anonymity, and that means that someone that is looking for talent, they can go in there, they can search for the capability they want, and they can also see very rich data around their availability, around their desired salary. And the thing that's quite nice about it in that scenario is that because you're actually in the market anonymously, right? So no name, no age, no gender. So in terms of sort of the biases that have come with that, so there's a lot of studies that show just even a name turns up a lot of the ethnic bias, and obviously we've all heard about sort of gender and age as well. So that's sort of the first product, and we've got over 3,000 businesses that are using that already. Everything from very small businesses up to very large. And then the second product that we launched about 6 months ago is called Live Talent Communities, which allows an organization to invite people to a talent community. So it's like an expression of their employee value proposition in a way. They join the community, and then the company nurtures that community as a future talent pipeline, and can basically categorize those people based on the, against their sort of strategic workforce plan, work out where they've got people, have them in advance so that when an opportunity arises, they can go straight to that individual. So it really is taking away, I think, what we sort of see too is, because there's no application processes going on, it's taking away the sort of rejection culture that normally comes with recruitment. So, and also means that you have a much more, I guess, truthful representation of that person versus, say, when someone's applying for a job, they're probably more likely to embellish, their skills, and therefore, when you're going through hundreds of CVs, a lot of them aren't relevant. So we're trying to make that whole process a lot more efficient. Sorry, Tanya.
There's a lot of value in job hire and engagement in terms of a company supporting and really embracing diversity in the workplace from a succession planning perspective. Because like John said, you have no idea what gender they are, what age they are, or anything. You're looking at someone's resume, CV, whatever you call it, and you're looking at it for what it is. So when you call on that person for an interview, it really starts breaking all of that down. And I think from an employee value proposition, that tool is so valuable for them to draw new talent into their business by being able to totally be unbiased in the promotion of people based on diversity. Sorry,
we've got some really nice. Thanks, Tanya, because we've got some really nice stories that have come through too. So, one of my favorites is a guy over in Western Australia who was 55. He'd been unemployed for 2 years. He never thought he was going to get another job. He had just no help at all. And through Live Hire, he got himself a job in the mining industry, still working. So his background was occupational health and safety, but he'd never sort of worked in mining. And so they were just looking completely at his skills, his experience. They brought off, it was a over $200,000 a year job. So we're not even talking about sort of, your low end job. It was a very experienced job. And now, here's someone that, because we know that how much sort of, being unemployed for a long amount of time can impact people's self-esteem, and so I just think that there's so many positives to this around people really being seen for their true potential versus sort of judged in these ways that we talk about a lot, but we've never actually been able to really fully address.
It's humanizing it, which is so nice.
Yeah, it's really humanizing. And I think sort of where I see us going is, so once you've got that talent community, you have a much deeper, richer set of information and understanding about your people's potential and their capability than we do today through traditional HR systems. And the main reason for that is that as a candidate or a worker or talent, whatever you want to sort of call it, you have full responsibility for your data. You own your data. Therefore, you're incentivized essentially to make that data as rich as possible to access as many opportunities as possible. And therefore, any traditional sort of HR systems or CRM systems, the quality, the integrity of that data, and also the I guess the depth of that data, it really varies across organizations depending on whether they've sort of hired people to sort of manually do it. And you hear this all the time about organizations saying, okay, well, once or twice a year they're going to do a cleanse, and they have their whole workforce basically going through these databases trying to, and I think again back to our wasted energy actions that are creating no value type thing. So this is incentivizing people to sort of own their own data and see how it actually creates value for them, as I think is a really key part of where we're going.
Very cool. Good. All right, you guys. Well, we are on an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to wrap it up unless somebody has something burning that they need to add. Nope. All right. So the last one I'm going to ask each one of you to share your takeaway, kind of where, as you leave this session, what's your And I do like Roy. Roy's not on anymore, but he talks about, you know, what's your emotional state? Because we make connections with emotional states. You know, where are you at? What are you feeling? And your last thoughts. So I'll give you just a second to think about it. And when whoever's ready, just jump on in.
Shall I go first? I'll come from a company perspective rather than a personal engagement perspective. And I think that companies need to stop assuming that just because someone's experiencing something or not experiencing it, and it's impacting their engagement levels. Because what they experience has nothing to do with employee engagement levels. It's what they desire and the gap between the two. That's what I would take. And another takeaway is that HR and marketing should be working closely together. Because what the employees do in the workplace, which is driven by and controlled by HR, has a dramatic impact on the marketing and branding of the business. I think they should be closely aligned in business.
Yep. Do you want to go, Tim?
Sean or Tim?
You can go.
I was going to say, well, for me, I mean, I'm sort of, I guess, a mix of hopeful and excited, you know, because I do think that this is a really unique sort of time to be in this space. I think we've seen, you know, there's an amazing amount of sort of macro trends work that's out there around the future of how workforces need to be, you know, and I think that what all of our platforms sort of have in common is that they're really about enabling people to be the best that they can be by giving them real feedback that they can then take responsibility for, right? And I think that the transparency of that data, you know, and all of our experiences surfacing that data so that people can see it for themselves. They're not feeling judged by somebody that's got biases or subject or knows or might have spent an hour within that whole year, but there's the one delivering their feedback. You know, I think this is a really unique time, and that's to Tanya's point. You know, this is what we've sort of been doing that in the customer space and the marketing space for a while, right? Marketing's been going through this digital transformation. It's time for HR to sort of jump on board and really demonstrate how, as Tanya said as well, it's the people that make the brand.
Fantastic.
Yeah, look, I mean, firstly for me, I've just really enjoyed this conversation, to be honest. It's new experience, but yeah, it's really cool chatting with just like-minded people. And look, I think I probably echo quite a lot of what Tanya and Sean said, but I guess my key is probably just going back to the start is, you know what engagement actually means to your company and to your teams, and you've got to recognize that it's actually about giving value rather than just expecting value to come out of your teams as well. But I think around that, you know, and really related to the individual side of things that we've talked about, is really about being specific. So particularly when you're talking about measurement, because you have to know what you're measuring, otherwise you'll be eternally chasing this idea of engagement and you'll never get there. So I think that just having that understanding, being more specific and having that knowledge is where you want to go.
Very good. Very good. Well, my last thoughts on this, I have a few thinking. I think that I'm excited for the industry. I do believe that we're in a big paradigm shift. But with that said, we also are about ready to face all the challenges that come along with a paradigm shift. And being 3 cutting edge products that are truly approaching this idea of engagement and workforce wellness, happiness, you know, et cetera, really approaching them very differently, we're going to have our challenges and we're going to get pushed back. And I think the biggest thing that what we need to do is we almost need to band together and just keep putting our foot down, stepping up on that soapbox. And you know, Tanya's heard me say it before. It's like, you know, it's like rolling snowballs uphill. You know, you get this idea and you keep rolling it and it gets bigger and heavier and scarier. And sometimes you just like, I cannot. But we know if we keep going, I know, over dramatic woman. we know if we can push it over that edge, there'll come a time when the 4 of us will be on a call like this, and hopefully within the next couple of years. And that sidebar will be just crammed with people wanting to know how we need to do this differently. And I think that's along with our products and what we're doing, I think that's our calling for this industry.
Here.
Come in. Love it.
All right. All right, you guys. Well, thank you guys. And Tim and Sean, it's so great meeting you in person-ish right here.
You too.
And we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for those of you who stuck in there. And this will be recorded. So people can come back and listen to it again.
Awesome.
And again and again. Any?
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.